Welcome to Frog Floss, Adventures in Fiber. Today, I want to talk about raw fleece. Now, probably, if you're a spinner, someone has said, "Oh, you spin? I've got some wool in my barn." Yeah, it's only been there for 20 years. And you said, "Oh, sure, why not? It's free." So you took it. Or you went online and you saw this really cute little sheep and he just had this really lovely expression and you bought his fleece. And it comes just the way it came off the sheep. It's not nice and neat. It's just stinky. It could use a few things. So let's talk about raw fleece. The first thing is your fleece came in a sack. It probably was plastic. So the first thing you need to do is to get it out of the plastic. This fiber here is some Suffolk. It's about 100 years old. It was stored in plastic. It's rotted. It's full of bugs. It's sweated in there. That's why it's still in plastic, because we don't want to have to smell it. So the first thing you do is get yourself as many pillowcases as you can lay your hands on. Thrift stores are wonderful for that. And you store your fiber just loosely packed in the bag. And it comes like this. And it's got little sticks called vegetable matter, little brown sticky spots, which we don't want to talk about. It's got burrs. It's got seeds. It's got things you don't even know what they are, okay? You look at this and you think, I can't spin this. It's terrible. Okay, so what do? We take a small amount. Now, this is a different fiber, okay? But we have a small amount of it. It doesn't look very appetizing either. It's very dirty on the tips. It's, I don't know. Can we save it? Of course we can. These little plastic bags that potatoes and carrots and onions and things come in are lifesavers. So what you want to do is you're going to take a small amount. Now, when I mean small amount, I mean like 2 handfuls. And you're going to put it in the bag. Now, you already know you're going to need an awful lot of these bags. What I recommend is you start with 1. You try the process. You see how it works for you. You see how your fiber turns out. If you don't like it, you can change things and you haven't reprocessed all of your fiber. So your fiber's in your bag. You're going to tie it off loosely. You just want it to stay in there, but you want it to be loose. It needs to have room to move around. Because when you clean it, it's going to want to pack down, and you don't want to encourage it to do that. Okay, so now we have it packed. Then we're going to need a lot of water, which is another reason to use just 1. You can use a smaller amount. The water that comes out of your faucet isn't hot enough. What you want to do is remove the grease, the lanolin that's in this wool. You need really hot water. What I usually do is I take a canning kettle, fill it full of water, and boil it. I can always make it cooler. I can't make it any hotter. So I take the boiling water, put it into a basin. Now, it's got to be large enough for this to fit in, lie there nice and comfortable, and not go anywhere, and not be crowded. Put the hot water in, add straight hot water out of your faucet until it's cool enough. Candy thermometer is very helpful for this. You're looking for 160 degrees or 150. It doesn't have to be exact, but that's the temperature, somewhere between 150, 160, where the lanolin will melt, and then it will come out of your fiber. It won't come out just with hot water. So we have to add something. What would be really nice is something that cuts grease. Like, well, there's several products that are made specifically for cleaning the wool. That was when I first started doing this. I didn't have internet access. I couldn't order anything. I learned to use Dawn dish detergent. It's not soap, it's detergent, and detergent is specifically made to cut grease, which is what we want. So we've got a bucket full of water that's very, very hot, and we put some Dawn dish detergent in there. How much? I use probably 1/4 of a cup in a 5-gallon bucket. I mean, we're talking really serious detergent. We're not washing dishes here. We're just what they call scouring, although there's no rubbing involved, your wool. So you're going to mix that in. Wear rubber gloves. It's very, very hot. Don't put your hands in it either way. I use a long-handled wooden spoon. Stir it all up. Make sure that that detergent is spread around through your water. Now you're ready to put your wool in. You lay it in very gently. It will float. Not good. We want to encourage it to sink. If you can sort of gently persuade it, most of the time it really doesn't want to sink. So we're going to pretend this is a Turkish towel. We're going to take a wet Turkish towel, fold it so that it completely covers the wool, lay it over the top. Now when we push down on that and get it in the water, it should stay there because the weight of the towel will hold it down. Then we wait. We wait and we wait and we wait. It takes 10 minutes, sometimes almost 20 minutes. Eventually, this will heat up and the lanolin will melt. And when it does, it goes out into the water and it stays there until the water cools when it goes back into the wool. So, if we can get the wool out of the water while the lanolin is in the water, we can take the wool out and leave the lanolin behind. So we take our towel off, we take our little bag, and we pick it up by the ends. And of course, it's going to be very wet and very heavy. Okay. We're going to set that someplace where it can kind of drain. It helps if you lay that Turkish towel over it, because you want it to stay hot. You don't want it to cool. Now you're going to get rid of the water that you have, that you've used, because it's full of lanolin. It's also all full of dirt and whatever else dissolved into the water. It's waste. Please do not put it down your drain. If you think about it, it's grease. It's like taking a whole tub of lard and pouring it down the drain, which your pipes are not going to like. So it's wastewater. It goes out in the garden somewhere else. Okay, so we take that bucket, we fill it up again. Now you can use water, straight hot water, out of your sink, because the water will be cooler than what you had before, but not cool. You want it as hot as you can get it out of your faucet. That's fine. Okay. You're going to take your wool. You're going to put it back in. No, nothing in there now. Just the wool. Okay. There's no soap. There's no detergent. Okay. You put that in there. It should be cool enough that with your gloves on, you can kind of under the water pat it. You know, kind of as long as you keep it under the surface of the water, you can squeeze it, you can poke it, you can say, oh, there's a hard spot here, we'll just give it a little rub. okay? You can fix all the little problems you think you might find. Oh, I didn't like that one. Oh, let's see if we can get that out. Okay, but you have to keep it below the surface of the water. If you don't, if it comes up and it goes back, and it comes up and it goes back, you've added to heat and detergent, you've added agitation. And those three things together make felt. Once it's felted, it's felt forever. And you don't want that to happen unless you happen to be making felt. If you're going to spin, that's not a good plan. So you squish this around, you make sure that all the sudsy stuff is out. You may have to do 2 or 3 rinses. You want to make sure you're not getting any more suds. You're going to do the same thing each time. You're going to take this out, you're going to set it aside, drain that water off. There shouldn't be any lanolin in there. That can go down the drain. You put some more water in. It doesn't have to be as hot. It can be lukewarm. So, each time you put it back in, it can be a little cooler. So now you can dispense with the gloves. But you're still going to pat this on. You're going to squish it a little bit under the water. Make sure that you've gotten all the suds out. Then you're going to take that bag out for the last time. And now what you have is, hopefully, wool that has had the lanolin removed. It's going to drip and it's going to drain and it's going to be very, very wet. You just hang it up and you let it hang until it's dry. Now, here's the trick. Wool will hold up to 15% of its weight in water, and it will feel dry to the touch. So when they tell you, oh, it dries in an hour, it dries to the touch in an hour, maybe, but it may not be dry. Give it time. Give it 2 days, 3 days. The way to get it to dry faster is you hang it up endwise. Then, whenever you think of it, turn it around the other way and let it drain. And you keep turning it. Even though it feels dry, you turn it every so often. What that does is the water itself is heavy enough that it will try to run down. And as it does, it runs along the outside of the fiber and it evaporates. Okay? Then it's gone as far as it's gone. It's kind of backing up a little bit. You turn it around and it starts running back down the other direction. Okay? And you turn that several times, back and forth, over a period of 2 to 3 days. If it's summertime and it's humid, maybe a week. Okay? When you're done, this is what you have. Okay? So this is, by the way, this fiber that's been washed. It's been scoured. Now, if you notice, it still has some little tips that don't look real good. Yeah, those might just, if I tease them, oh, look at that. They come right out. Okay? Nothing to be concerned about. On the other hand, I have all these little sticks and twigs are still in there. So, this is where you get to go through your wool and you pull this stuff out. And you pull this out and you throw it away and you pull out these little pieces. And you could spend a few days doing that. And you're not going to get it all. I mean, you're still going to have as many of these as you pick out. You're still going to have more. So now what do? Depends on the fiber. Mostly what I do is I comb it. I have wool combs that I use. These are, okay. We have wool combs. These are wicked, wicked sharp, okay? But you put your wool on here and you comb it off with another one, okay? And what it does is it opens up the fiber, and as you do it, all the icky stuff tends to drop out on the table, which you can really see, but yep, we're getting some of it, okay? If you use cards, which is what most people are familiar with, is wool cards. If you use cards, whatever is in your fiber when you start carding is in your fiber when you're done carding. So if you don't have one of these, I started out using a dog comb. Works just fine. All you want to do is open the fiber and encourage all these little bits, you know. And if you're really desperate, you can just do it the old-fashioned way. I mean, back in the day when wool was, or when steel was very, very expensive, what they did is they would just take the locks after they were clean and just pull them apart. Just fluff them up. And of course, they shed something terrible when you do that, okay? Because all those little tiny pieces are coming out, okay? And that's how they opened. They didn't have cards, they didn't have combs. They just did it, and they made fluffy stuff. Now you can see that there's not quite as much stuff in there. Some of it has fallen out. If you do this repeatedly in small pieces, you'll get more and more of it to fall out. And eventually, it gets down to a place where, okay, that's good enough, you know, and then you can get it ready for spinning. Now, suppose we took this and we tried to scour it. I could get all of the lanolin out of that and it would still be horrible stuff. It was so dirty. It had so many of these horrible dark tips that what I did is I took that 5-gallon bucket, filled it with cold water, took my fiber, put it in its little bag so I don't have loose ends flying all over the place, and soaked it overnight in cold water. And in the morning, when I pulled it out, it looked kind of like weak coffee. So I emptied it out. I filled the bucket back up. I soaked it again. I soaked it again. I soaked it again. It took about 4 days before the water looked kind of clean. Now, that's because this particular wool was sheared in the barn, loose. It had all the dirt off the floor of the barn in it. And fortunately, a cold water soak will get almost all of that out before you start trying to scour it. So after I did that, I actually had something that was still full of twigs and seeds, but it looked better already than it had looked before. And that's when I fell in love with it. This came from a little black sheep. It's not black, it's actually dark brown, but the sheep looked black. And you notice these little tips are a whole different color. But they're just, if you think about it, there's the sheep all summer and then all winter out in the sun. And it's got burnt ends, split ends, little bleaching going on there. You know, anybody who's got dark hair knows how that works in the summertime. So it works the same for a sheep. Their ends get bleached. So I looked at it and said, oh, you know, I bet it'll, by the time I get this all ready to go, it'll look a lot better and it'll be okay. So I salvaged that bit of really rotten stuff just by cold water soaks, lots and lots and lots of them, and then a good scour, and then picked all the little things out of them, all the odds and ends, and okay. And then I ended up with some really nice looking stuff. And as you notice in this part, the ends are starting to disappear because they start blending in with everything else. So this looks a whole lot different. It's a different color. It's more heathery, but I've salvaged that. Now, this was the same thing. This is, if you look at this, again, this is the horrible stuff. I mean, this looks unsalvageable. Just looks totally useless. Okay? Look at the color of this. How yellow this is. This is the same wool after it's been scoured. It's starting to look white and fluffy like wool should look. Whole different animal. And all I did was scour it. It still has all the twigs and the seeds and but it's missing all the greasy stuff. So, once you've scoured, once you've got this, then you're ready to start preparing your fiber to be spun. And that is a whole different episode. So, we'll see you next time. Thank you.